The long-awaited Busan video is finally here! Yeah! I had mentioned doing a things to do in Busan video a few months ago, and I am happy to say I am finally delivering on it. Sorry for the wait to everyone who's been waiting, but hopefully it was worth it. There's a lot to cover today, so let's get to it, shall we? Okay, so similar to our Seoul video, we're going to talk about Busan in terms of region. We're going to start from the west and work our way to the east. Busan is actually quite spread out, so you'd really want to keep in mind the location of places when you're planning out your itinerary. You want to make sure that you're allotting enough time for travel in between places. So first on the list, we have the iconic Gamcheon Cultural Village. Now, when you think Busan, this is probably going to be the first thing that you picture in your head, or the first thing that you see on cover photos and thumbnails of videos, all of that. It is a really impressive sight to see with all the colorful houses and all that, but you'll also notice that these are actually people's homes, so you want to be mindful of that and be respectful of the people who are still living there. There are a lot of empty houses nowadays, so it can actually be quite eerie and I don't know, it's not very welcoming in that sense, because over 300 of those houses are actually empty and not occupied. But you'll definitely see a lot of tourists still wandering around, even local tourists. Definitely expect a line at the lookout point with the prints. That initial stretch of Gamcheon Cultural Village is going to be the most populated place. If you decide to make your way down through the cultural village and to wander around to see all of the other viewpoints, make sure you stop by Duff Coffee. The cafe doesn't really have that many drink selections, and the drinks are just mediocre, if anything, at best, but the cafe itself is really cool. The owner had put a lot of thought into decorating their rooms. There's even hanboks that you can put on for pictures and stuff in the backyard, so it's definitely worthy of checking out. If you move a little bit closer to the port side, you'll go into the area for Biff Square. And Biff Square is where the Busan International Film Festival had originated. It's kind of like the Chinese theater in Hollywood. So when you go to Biff Square, you'll see a lot of famous Korean actors and actresses and their handprints or footprints all along the ground. But aside from finding your favorite actor or actress's handprint or footprint, there's also a ton of food stands here during the day and through the night, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later on in the video. Within walking distance of Biff Square, so literally within a 5-block radius of Biff Square, you will find a ton of traditional markets, and they kind of all blend into each other. But the 3 traditional markets that you'll find in that area are Gukjeon Market, Jagachi Market, and Bupyeon Market. Each of the markets are known for different things. Make sure you watch my Busan street food vlog for more details on the markets and what you can find there, because I had taken a tour with Siri through Airbnb Experiences. She had gone through so much about the history and culture of the area, and I thought that was really helpful in understanding more about the Busan culture itself as well. If you go a little bit north of Biff Square, you'll find a little area called the Posudong Book Alley. I personally did not visit here, but it was on my list. I just never made my way there. Found out about this place through some of my friends, actually. They have visited there and thought it was really cool. It's like a street filled with old stationery stores. My friends had actually gone flea market shopping over there, so they were able to find a lot of good deals. The vibe of it is definitely more vintage. A note about these types of places though is you probably want to have a better handle of your Korean to get around, or have someone who can speak Korean to help you navigate through the shops and the streets, just because the population who lives there is going to be older, so they most likely won't be able to communicate as well to you through English. So across the Yeongdo Bridge, you'll find another cultural village that I feel like isn't quite talked about as much, but it's so underrated, and it's called the Hwennyo Cultural Village. I know that Gamcheon Cultural Village has the nickname of being Korea's Santorini or Machu Picchu, but I feel like Hwennyo Cultural Village reminds me more of Santorini than Kamcheon Cultural Village. Again, it is a cultural village. Make sure you're being respectful when you are wandering the area because those are people's houses. However, there are a ton more cafes there as well. So that is what I would recommend you go there for actually is, you know, you can take a stroll along the coastline and or go to a cafe with a great view and then go during sunset. That would be the prime viewing spot for it. Next, we're gonna move to Seommyeon. Seommyeon is kind of like the hub of Busan. It's also in a more central-ish location compared to all of the other places that we're talking about today in this video. There's a whole underground shopping strip, which is just okay compared to the underground shopping malls that I have visited in Seoul. I actually prefer the shops above the ground at Seommyeon. They have a ton of different clothing shops. They also have a ton of restaurants. It kind of has like a Hongdae vibe. It's just very lively and full of young people everywhere. One station over from Seommyeon, you'll hit Jeonpo. Jeonpo has this like 3-block radius of cafes and restaurants that I would definitely recommend you check out if you are into cafe hopping. And I had actually gone twice in an attempt to cafe hop there. You can check out my vlogs on that as well. But my favorite places there actually ended up being like a stationery store and this Greek yogurt place that I found. While we are in this like central-ish location in Busan, definitely check out Hwaryeongsan if you can. It's like this mountain in the middle of the city and you can get a really great 360 view of Busan up there at the peak. So make sure you go on like a clear day or at night. The night view is spectacular. The only downside of going here is the fact that you need a car. They do have buses that run up there, but I don't think it runs on a really frequent schedule, so it might be a little bit harder to go via public transportation, especially at night. So make a friend who has a car or, you know, rent a car to make your way up there for a few hours. The view is definitely worth it. If you can't make it up there, I do have some alternatives for a overlook kind of view later on in the video as well. Compared to Seoul, I would actually say that Busan is more like artistic and culturally rich. And because of that, Busan has a lot of great museums that you can visit, particularly art museums. I, however, as you know, am not a fan of art museums, but there was one museum that I did enjoy and that was Museum Da. It is in Sentam City next to, I think, the Shinsegae, which by the way is like the largest Shinsegae in the world. What's really cool about Museum Da is that it's a media art gallery that is quite small. There's only one main hall with maybe 4 to 5 different rooms on the sides, but you can spend a good like hour to hour and a half there to look through all of the exhibitions and also all of the displays because it does change every like minute or so. Is it an Instagram trap? Maybe, but it was still cool. So make sure you bring a friend along to help you take your pictures because you can't bring in any tripods through the exhibition halls. The next area we're going to talk about is Gwangalli. Gwangalli Beach is known for its fine sand. While I had visited during fall time, so I didn't really get to partake in the beach activities, I do know that Gwangalli Beach, Haeundae Beach, and Songjong are usually the 3 beaches where you will find a lot of these different classes like surf classes or water activities that you can partake in. Aside from the beach at Gwangalli, you can also get a really nice view of Gwangan Bridge, which is really pretty at night actually. It's lit up. My friend had actually told me it's actually really pretty too when you drive through it. It is definitely a iconic spot to see in Busan. Alright, so next we have Haeundae. Haeundae is where I stayed when I was in Busan, so I have a little bit more suggestions for this area than others. I don't think you need to do all of them if you're only there visiting for a few days, and I don't think all of them are like must-visit places. However, I did have a lot of fun there. If you're interested in these places that I had mentioned, most of these places I had actually vlogged about in my Busan vlogs, so be sure to check that out as well for more details. But let's get to some of the must-see places in Haeundae. Haeundae Beach is one of the most famous and popular beaches in Korea. There's usually a ton of festivals that happen in the area. It is definitely also a destination spot for tourists. But the first and foremost to visit is the Blue Line Park. And this is a great way to get that coastal view. If you can't make it to any of the other places I had mentioned previously, this is definitely one of your must-do things. The Blue Line Park is also where you'll find that Instagram famous sky capsule. It's really, really cute. I, however, did not want to spend the money to ride the capsules itself. The capsules will take you directly to Cheongsapo, which is the lighthouse, but the park actually extends all the way over to Songjeong, so you can walk all the way there and then take public transportation back to Haeundae or to wherever you are wanting to go to next. There are a few restaurants and cafes along the way, but most of them are going to be at Cheongsapo. I would definitely recommend going earlier in the morning though, because there is no sun cover. It's mostly open, but that's how you can really get a good view of the coastline. The next place I would recommend in Haeundae is Busan in the Sky. And Busan in the Sky is I think the second tallest building in Korea. So this is definitely the alternative for getting that overhead view of Busan if you can't make it up to Hwaryongsan. It is also where the tallest Starbucks in the world is, but honestly, it's not that special. Is really just an observation deck, but it is a great place to go to view Busan in its whole entirety. It is quite breathtaking to actually be able to see that. Another area that I want to shout out about in Haeundae is called Haeritangil, and I had mentioned that before in my vlogs as well. I had gone cafe hopping there. It is one of my favorite little neighborhoods within Haeundae. I wouldn't say that this is like a must-go-to place, but if you are in the area and you have time to kill and you like cafes, this is a great little neighborhood to go wander around in to try to find a cute spot with a lot of personality to kind of chill and drink some coffee or some tea. Okay, so moving on further east, we have Kijang. Kijang is kind of an up-and-coming area, and one of the most iconic places in that area is Haedong Yonggusa is the temple by the sea. In Busan, there are a few temples that are very well known. One is Pomosa, which is within the mountains, so it's a little bit further north, I believe, and a little bit more secluded to get to. I personally did not get to visit Pomosa, but it is definitely, you know, one of those iconic places of Busan to visit. The other temple is Haedong Yonggusa, and I found Haedong Yonggusa to be so pretty. I'm usually not the biggest fan of visiting temples because I think I was dragged around too much as a kid with my dad. However, Haedong Yonggusa is just really, really pretty. Like the architecture itself along the coastline, like that whole view is really, really breathtaking and definitely worth going to see. And because it is further out of the way from the city center, I would recommend, you know, planning your travels accordingly. It does take a little bit of time to get there via public transportation because they also don't run as frequently either. But another thing about Kijang, as an up-and-coming area, there are a lot of restaurants and cafes there too to check out. Typically those restaurants and cafes all come with a view. If you want to treat yourself out to a nice dinner or something, that is probably the area to go to. Okay, so we talked about the things to do in Busan. Now that you have a general idea of where everything is, I'm gonna give you my recs on the areas that you should look for your accommodations in. I personally stayed in Haeundae, like I mentioned before. I really liked it. However, it is a little bit further out of the way from everything else. So if you plan on only being there for, I don't know, 3 to 5 days, I don't know if I would recommend staying in Haeundae, especially depending on the different things that you do want to incorporate into your itinerary. If you want to do all of the like iconic things, they're kind of spread out. So I would actually recommend that you find somewhere to stay in like Seomyeon or Gwangali because they are a little bit more centrally located and they also tend to have more food and shopping around the area, so there's also more of a tourist population there as well. and there are definitely going to be more accommodations available in those areas. Okay, we can't talk about Busan without talking about some of the foods that you have to try while you are there. Busan is of course known for its seafood because it is a port city, so any seafood that you get will most likely be very fresh and very good. But there are a few dishes that I would highly recommend that you try in Busan because you can't really get it anywhere else. The first one is 돼지국밥. And this is something that like any local Busan person will tell you is like the iconic dish of Busan. What it is basically pork bone soup with rice. But the way that they make it is so flavorful, like they really take their time in stewing the broth. 돼지국밥 was actually very homey feeling to me, and it was like the perfect meal to have when it was rainy or cloudy or muggy. It was just like nice and comforting, you know, it was a comfort food. And another food that I would definitely recommend that you try when you're in Busan is hotdog. Hotdog is a Korean pancake filled with brown sugar filling, and you can typically get it in Seoul as well. However, the ones that I've gotten in Seoul are just like not as good, and also there are different variations. The ones I got in Busan were like smaller and they were like a little bit more chewier in the dough, but Busan is also known for its siat hotdog, which is seed-filled pancake. In addition to the brown sugar filling, they also include nuts and different like pine seeds or sunflower seeds to make it like a sweet and savory taste. The best one that I've had while I was there is at Biff Square. There are 2 stands at Biff Square, but go to the one that has a line. I tried both stands because, you know, for scientific research purposes, I had to. The stand that usually has more people is like infinitely better. I don't know what it is about it that makes it better, but oh my god, it's so good. My roommate that I was staying with, she like would go all the way out to Biff Square, which is like a 40-minute subway ride from Haeundae, just to get that hot dog. And that's how good it is. For regular hot dogs, I actually really like the ones that were available at the Haeundae market. Another snack that I couldn't really find anywhere else except for in Busan is muldok. And what it is a long piece of rice cake on a skewer, and they cook it in the broth with the omuks. So you can find these at the street food stands, and they're usually like 1,000 won or 1,500 won, so not very expensive but very delicious. It's because it's cooked in that same broth as the fish cakes, the outer edges are more savory, and then with the rice cake itself, it has like a very slight sweetness to it. The more you chew, the sweeter it gets, as with white rice. In Busan, I saw it like at every street food stand. It was like a staple that they had along with the omuks, which is definitely something that you should have while you're in Busan because they are fresh, by the way. Another thing that you should try when you're in Busan is daegutang. The dish itself is pretty good, but I don't know if it's like one of those you have to eat this kind of thing. But what's really interesting about it in Busan is that typically the daegutang that you'll order in Seoul is a red pepper based soup. As with a lot of different Korean stews, they're all like red. But the daegutang that you'll get in Busan is actually clear broth. So it's still spicy, but it's a different kind of flavor, which I thought was really, really interesting. This was definitely a very refreshing kind of taste. It's just a very interesting thing to note. Speaking of Korean foods that you can't get anywhere else, did you know that there are also a ton of snacks that are only available in Korea? SeoulBox is a subscription snack box that brings you curated snacks and goods from Korea all the way to your front door. There's usually a theme for each box, which is delivered on a monthly basis. But what's really cool is it also comes with this Seoul zine, which is like the SeoulBox magazine. Not only does it include details about all the goodies that are in the box, but also it comes with a bunch of cool cultural insights as well for Korea. If you're unable to travel to Korea just yet, or if you're just really missing the foods that you had while you were there, this is a great way to treat yourself and get that fixed. I'll link more information about the SeoulBox in the description box below, so be sure to check that out. I am just genuinely very interested in these types of snack boxes. I used to be subscribed to them for like ages until I realized I was only one person and couldn't finish all the snacks, and I should have just like not snacked as much as I did, but I love these subscription boxes because it gives you a really easy way to try new things and to learn about a culture that's not necessarily very accessible to you. Alright, so I hope all of this information is helpful to you in planning your trip to Busan. As I mentioned previously, I stayed in Busan for like 5 weeks during my last trip. I definitely have a lot of thoughts and feels for the place. I also have a ton of vlogs that I've mentioned throughout this video. Be sure to check those out if you have more questions or want more details on specific things that I've mentioned in this video. And I hope you safe and happy travels. Bye!